Podcasting from Singapore and broadcasting all around the world, you're listening to the Ignite EdTech Podcast with Craig Kemp, created by an educator, for educators, and streaming to the world. Now, over to your host, Craig Kemp.
Hello and welcome to episode 78 of the Ignite EdTech Podcast. I'm your host, Craig Kemp, and I'm thrilled to have you join us. As most of you know, I continue to work with the incredibly talented Mark Quinn to improve the final audio quality of this podcast. He has his own podcast production studio that provides editing and mastering services to content creators. To connect with Mark, please see the details in the podcast notes below. Last week, I asked you about your goals for the year ahead. Here are some of my favourite thoughts that were shared. Check out the social streams for more. Sam, from here in Singapore, said that his goal for 2022 was to be more engaged in his own professional learning and growth. Anita, from Australia, shared that her goal for 2022 was to have a better work-life balance and invest more time at home. And Muhammad from Indonesia let us know that his goal for 2022 was to listen more and talk less with his interactions both in class and in meetings. Thank you to everyone who shared their thoughts for the year ahead. This week, I wanted to ask about how you plan on actioning your goals for 2022. It's one thing setting goals, but moving from an idea or aspirational thought to action is challenging. How are you making sure you follow through and make it a reality? Please share with us via our Ignite EdTech social streams. I look forward to hearing your responses soon. A tool that has positively impacted the authentic and purposeful use of technology into classrooms and meeting rooms that I have worked in is WurrlyEdu. WurrlyEdu is the ultimate app for all music teachers and teachers that integrate music into their classrooms. WurrlyEdu recommends the program as part of a special education and music therapy program as well. I love WurrlyEdu's culturally relevant content, which makes it easy to implement a fun and effective music program. Almost all kids love music, and since it's inherently collaborative, it lends itself extremely well to teaching critical life skills, such as emotional recognition, pattern recognition, impulse control, adaptability, collaboration, listening, communication, problem solving, empathy, critical and creative thinking, and much more. Teachers could start using WurrlyEdu by introducing students to the program. During these intro sessions, students could play around with the app in class while the teacher makes sure that everyone knows how to record and submit their assignments and how to view their feedback. Afterwards, teachers can select the lesson plans and music they want to use and create assignments. Students complete those assignments, send back recordings to teachers who can then assess student progress via both feedback and grades. I highly recommend that you take a look at the link in the description below. This week, I wanted to talk about critical tech skills that all students need to be successful in the world we live in now and the world that they will lead in the future. I have two favourite types of data sources to support the integration of tech skills into a holistic school strategic tech plan. One is internal data, the other is external data. It might seem simple, but often we ask our internal people questions in schools, but forget to think about and look at what global data is telling us. External data can help us see trends, support global outlooks, and be better at integrating technology to support the needs of our students for their futures. One of my favourite sources of external data to help inform decision-making in schools is the World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs report, as previously mentioned on this podcast. The Future of Jobs report is something that the World Economic Forum produces regularly, with the last data shared in December of 2020. With a simple Google, you'll see the top 10 skills our learners need to be successful in 2025. I've also included the link in the podcast notes below. One activity I encourage you to do is to look at the list and ask yourself, how many of these skills do I explicitly teach? How many of these skills are integrated into my classroom? And even more importantly, into the education of your parent community and professional learning opportunities for your team. As we think about taking learning to the next level and supporting learners in this post-pandemic world we're striving to enter, then we need to be future-focused and use internal and external data to inform our decision-making. Too many schools that I have conversations with are still saying, this is the way we've done things, and we've used this tool or platform for years. It's time to forget about that. Try new things, push boundaries, look at what's out there, and start looking at how you can support the growth of all learners in your organization. What are you doing to be better and to push learning boundaries with the future in mind? I'd love to hear from you, to learn more about the skills you feel are necessary for our learners and how you're integrating these into your classroom or school. Please reach out with your ideas and thoughts. Every week, I bring you a short interview with some of my edu heroes, an engaging learning experience with someone who makes a difference in education every day, with a particular focus or angle towards educational technology. This week, I had the pleasure of chatting with Ryan Persaud. Let's have a listen to the chat. Today, I have the honor of speaking with Ryan Persaud, who you may know is at Ryan Persaud 23 on Twitter. Ryan and I have been connected for a long time now, and I'm constantly inspired by his leadership and drive to thrive. Ryan is the Director of IT and Innovation at ISC Brazil and is based in Curitiba, Brazil. He is equity-focused, believes in design thinking, is a Google certified trainer, and loves connecting and growing with his professional learning network. Ryan, it's a pleasure to have you on the show today. Are you ready to talk about education and technology integration?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Craig, for having me. And, you said you've been inspired by me, but all the work that you're doing recently with EduSpark is just a huge congratulations. I know the kind of work it takes as an entrepreneur, and behind you 110%. Wish you nothing but success.
Appreciate that, Ryan. Thank you so much, mate. Let's go. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about your current role and what inspires you to do what you do?
Sure. Thank you. So as one can imagine, as a Director of IT and Innovation, I've kind of got two hats that I wear. I spend some time with my IT team and managing our networks and our hardware, our software, our systems and integrations along those lines, applications and EdTech apps. And I've got a great team that I work with who help me out there, and really they're the experts that I tend to lean on. It's really interesting, Craig, because I know some directors of IT, they come into these roles and they've had 10, 15 years of IT and maybe some network backbone infrastructure experience. When I came into the role here at ISC, and this is my fourth year now, during the interview process, I let my interview team know when I was going through the process that, I'm not one of those guys, but I've learned a lot along the way, and I'm a learning leader. And they said to me, "That's perfect, because we got a bunch of resumes that look like that and threw them out, and we want an educational leader to lead our school." And so I really get where the juices get flowing is when I get to spend time on the innovation side. I had the opportunity when I came here to hire a design teacher, which was the first one we ever hired, and be involved in a process of building a design and innovation center, some would call a makerspace. And I'm working with an architect now who works with our school to look at a potential second space for high school and grow the program. I had the opportunity to go out to Stanford and get design thinking trained and bring that back to the school and launch that, push into classes for digital citizenship, help out with policy. Right now I'm working with kind of an IB working group where we're looking at assessment. And so that innovation hat really lets me spread my wings at the school and dip my fingers into a lot of things and have some great influence and conversations that are impacting our kids. Now, you asked me what inspires me to do what I do. Well, it always starts with students. Like, I think, I'm a teacher first. That's where I always start. I started, I was in the classroom 10 years before I moved into educational leadership. And so it's all about the kids and how we can make these experiences more authentic and bring in innovation for them. And of course, connecting with teachers and having the opportunity to work with them as well. And for me, I just love new challenges and growth opportunities. So any chance I have to grow, I'm always looking forward and looking for what I can bring back to the school and help the school grow as well.
Yeah, and you've done a lot of that recently too. You were recently in the role of interim head of school,
Yeah.
and you've told me a little bit already about that experience and the amazing things that opportunity has given you. Tell us a little bit about that experience in that role. What did you learn as the interim head of school?
Sure. Thank you for mentioning that, and it's nice to have a little bit of an opportunity prior with you to talk about that one on one and to share now. It was obviously not something I was expecting when I walked into the last school year. Things were in a very good place. We were in the midst of pandemic, but we had a very good virtual learning program that our team was running, and people felt good about the situation we were in. But unfortunately, the board made a decision, and our head of school was walked out. And on Friday, November 13th, I'll never forget the date. And I got a phone call from the board, and they asked me, they said, we want you to unanimously take over and be our interim head of school until our new head walks in. They had already gone through a process and chosen a new head of school who's currently with us now, and he was arriving in July. So I took over for about 10 months. And I said yes. I kind of knew what I was getting into, but I didn't quite know what I was getting into. And amidst that 10 months, Brazil ended up being the worst country in the world for COVID for a period of time during my tenure as interim head of school. So there was a lot of learning initially. I mean, one, it was about healing the community because someone had been walked out. Obviously, it was a very delicate situation, and certain things could not be said, and only very bare minimum of information could be shared with the community. So you're trying to come in as an interim head of school and rebuild trust with an entire community. There was a lot of learning for me in that, in terms of just constant communication and making myself available for the entire community, and trying to rebuild that trust. And I think at the same time, trying to keep teaching and learning going, because that's the core of what any school does. So we didn't want the focus to be on, this situation. We wanted the attention and the focus to come back to the kids. And we were always trying to do that. I think, there's three words that come to mind for me when I think about that 10-month period. And that's trust, that's relationships, that's communication. We know the foundation of everything in leadership, or whether you're in the classroom or any type of role in the school, really even on the operations side, is just building trust. I mean, it's such a important topic that Stephen Covey wrote an entire book on it, and we hear Simon Sinek and Brene Brown talk about that topic all the time. And I think with trust comes building those relationships, of course, and then just being a good communicator. My communication skills really flourished throughout that experience because I was just doing so much of it. So there were some really great things, I think, to come out for the school, but also for me personally in terms of just building my own repertoire of skills.
Yeah, it's amazing, mate. It's cool to see the journey that you've been on and the progress that you've made, and the work that's been done to get to where you are as a school leader as well. And obviously, you've got some big next steps. I'm curious to hear, what are your next big goals in your career? What do you want to do or achieve that you haven't been able to do yet?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I always felt like I might want to be a head of school at some point in time. And I think as trying as the situation was, I still have that as a goal in mind. I'm not sure about a timeline yet. I haven't really pegged one yet for it, but I think based on that experience and the skill set that I've built, I really feel like that is a goal of mine at some point in the future. I'm in a good place right now. I'm still learning. Our new head of school who's come in, Dr. DeRoche from Stanford American, is a veteran head of school. So it's a good opportunity for me to continue to learn from him. And we'll see, how things unfold down the road. But it's definitely something I've got my sights set on. The other thing that I recently started was my doctorate in educational leadership through the University of Western Ontario. And so that's been great. I just finished my first course, so that was a nice experience to get back into academia. And it's a little bit of an interesting story that I'll share how I really jumped into it. I've been thinking about doing my EdD for quite some time, but when the March on I should say the siege on Capitol Hill happened on January 6th, that really kind of spurred me to take some action. You mentioned that I'm equity focused, and I do tweet a lot and put out on LinkedIn a lot about these topics. And that situation really shook me to go back and educate myself. So I'm looking at as I take on my EdD, I'm looking at focusing in on equity work and equity and DEIJ work in schools, and how leadership teams can better prepare themselves to do this work in schools and why it matters.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the work that you've done in that space has really shone through in your sharing on social and your conversations that you're having with people, and obviously the work you did as an interim head of school as well. And it's exciting to see and hear all of the outcomes that are starting to come out of that work. And I look forward to seeing what comes next as well, because I know there are going to be big things, and I'm excited to follow along with that.
There absolutely are a few things on the horizon, so you'll have to look out coming soon.
Awesome. Yeah, really excited, mate. Can't wait to see that. Let's jump into some quick fire questions. The first thing that comes to your head, and maybe a little why. What is your hashtag one word for 2022?
I think for 2022, it's going to be team. For me, I love, I've got my IT team, I've got a leadership team, I've got a design team that I work with, and just working with them and keeping them focused on what our goals are. We're in an exciting time as we're just coming out with our new strategic plan for the next 3 years. So I think being able to work with these teams as we roll into, in 2022, it's going to be a very exciting time for our school.
Yeah, amazing. What's your favorite EdTech book or resource, Ryan?
Well, an oldie but a goodie for me that I will recommend to people who are looking to explore the word innovation and what it means for their school, or looking to rethink innovation, is The Innovator's Mindset by George Couros. I know it's a little bit of an oldie, but I think there's a lot of gems in there when it has to do with innovation. Now, a great resource that I helped start was a Brazilian director of innovation, director of IT group. And that's been a godsend as I've been in this role the last 4 years. So there's about 10 of us at international schools in Brazil, and we just share resources in this WhatsApp group, or ask questions, or, looking to source new hardware or software. And it's just been invaluable to build that professional learning network.
Yeah, that's really cool. I agree with those small micro networks. We did the same thing in Singapore, and it was one of the best learning experiences that I could have asked for. So well done on that. What's your go-to EdTech tool that the listeners should be trying?
One of my favorites that I like to recommend to teachers is Wakelet. I'm sure it's been mentioned before. I know it's been around a little bit, but I just love I just love it as a curation tool for students and for teachers. And I love that they keep expanding on what it can do. And so that's really been a neat one for us throughout the pandemic. And the other one, which is a classic, which helped us a lot, was Flipgrid. I know you mentioned one, I'm throwing in two here, but Flipgrid was another one that are just seemed to be such a great tool for our teachers throughout the pandemic as well, and as we come back face to face.
Brilliant. And what's one daily habit or practice that helps you enjoy, progress, and succeed in your career, Ryan?
Yeah, it's exercise. I like to lift weights, and I try and get to the gym about 6 days a week. Put in about an hour. Yeah, so I put about 6 hours in a week. I really enjoy it. I started lifting weights when I was about 20 years old, and I'm now 45, so I'm still at it 25 years later. And I find it lets me de-stress the day. It lets me just have a little bit of that selfish time, listen to some music, focus in on myself, and then I can come back home and I've had that chance to just get some of that negative energy out and enjoy my evening and get on with the next day.
Amazing, mate. What's the best way for the listeners to follow and connect with you? Because you've shared so many amazing things in here that I know people are going to want to jump in and follow up in a conversation with you.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned at the beginning my Twitter. It's at Ryan Persaud 23. That's definitely the best way. And another platform I like to use is LinkedIn as well. So I like to push out a lot of professional content on those two platforms.
Awesome. And we'll make sure all the links that you've shared here in the podcast notes below as well. Ryan, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure learning with you.
Thanks for having me again, and good luck in 2022.
Same to you. Thanks, mate. Next week, join me for episode 79 of the Ignite EdTech Podcast when I'm joined by the inspirational Tracy Izzard. Want to win a prize? Enter now at bit.ly/edtechwin, and we'll regularly announce winners of incredible prizes. If you enjoyed today's episode, please follow us and share the podcast with your PLN and colleagues. Please remember to spend a few minutes to rate this podcast too on your podcast channel of choice so we can reach even more educators and edtech enthusiasts globally. Remember, you have the chance to win as well. Check out the links in the description for more, and I'll see you again next week.
If you liked today's episode, please don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss another episode. And be in the drawing to win prizes every week. If you know others that would enjoy the show, please hit that share button and brighten their day. Join us again next week for your weekly EdTech hit with @Mr. Kemp NZ. We'll see you again soon.